The evening rush at La Riviera was finally winding down. The restaurant's warm lighting cast a golden glow over the white tablecloths and crystal glasses. In the corner sat a grand piano polished to perfection, yet rarely touched except by the occasional weekend performer. Most nights it was just for show, an elegant prop in an establishment where appearances mattered above all else. Lisa wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, careful not to let her manager see such an unrefined gesture. 6 hours into her double shift, her feet ached in the mandatory black shoes that looked professional, but felt like torture devices. Still, she kept her smile in place as she cleared a table by the window. 2 more hours, she whispered to herself. 2 more hours, and then she could go home to her tiny apartment, kick off these awful shoes and maybe, just maybe, get an hour of studying in before exhaustion took over. Nursing school wasn't going to pay for itself. Neither was her mother's medication. So here she was, 24 years old, with dreams as big as her bank account was small, serving overpriced meals to people who spent on one dinner what she made in a week. Lisa, table 14 needs water, called Diane, the senior waitress who had taken Lisa under her wing 3 months ago when she started. And heads up, it's Blake. Lisa's stomach tightened. Everyone knew about Richard Blake, tech millionaire, regular customer, legendary tipper, but only if everything was perfect. Otherwise, he could make your night miserable with complaints to management. Thanks for the warning, Lisa said, filling a crystal pitcher with ice water. She took a deep breath and headed toward table 14. The man sat alone, absorbed in his phone. His tailored suit probably cost more than her semester's tuition. Steel gray hair framed a face that might have been handsome if not for the permanent frown lines etched around his mouth. He didn't look up as she approached. Good evening, sir. Welcome back to La Riviera, Lisa said, using her practiced restaurant voice, friendly but not too familiar. Richard Blake barely nodded, still focused on whatever important business occupied his screen. Lisa carefully leaned in to fill his water glass, her mind drifting to the melody that had been stuck in her head all day. Without realizing it, she began to hum softly, a habit her mother always said would get her in trouble one day. It was a piece she had loved since childhood. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The notes always brought her back to sitting beside her mother on their old piano bench, learning to make those beautiful sounds come alive under her small fingers, lost in the memory. Lisa didn't notice Mr. Blake finally looking up from his phone. She didn't see his startled expression as he recognized the melody, and she certainly didn't see the water glass overflow as she poured too much, lost in her quiet humming. The cold splash of water hitting his hand snapped them both back to reality. "I'm so sorry," Lisa gasped, mortified. Water had spilled onto the white tablecloth and worse, onto the sleeve of his expensive suit. She grabbed her serving napkin and dabbed frantically at his cuff. This was it. This was how she'd get fired. Spilling water on Richard Blake while humming instead of paying attention. Diane would never let her live this down, if she even kept her job. But the explosion she expected didn't come. Instead, Blake pulled his arm back slowly and looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You were humming Chopin," he said. It wasn't a question. Lisa froze, napkin in hand, caught off guard by this unexpected comment. Yes. Sorry about that too. It's just been stuck in my head today." Nocturne in E-flat major, he continued, his voice losing some of its usual sharpness. Opus 9, number 2. Now it was Lisa's turn to stare. Most people couldn't identify classical music, let alone name the specific opus. "You know it?" Something flickered across his face, a shadow of emotion quickly concealed. "I know music," he said simply, then gestured to the water stain. "Don't worry about this." Hazard of dining out. Relief washed over her. Not fired today, at least. "Thank you for understanding. Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu? Scotch. Neat. The Macallan 18 if you have it." "Right away, sir." As Lisa turned to head toward the bar, she heard him call after her. "The piano. Does anyone play it?" She looked back at the grand piano sitting in the corner. "Sometimes on weekends we have a pianist, but during the week it's mostly just for show." Blake nodded thoughtfully, ashamed to let such an instrument sit silent. Something about his tone made Lisa pause. There was longing there, buried beneath his businesslike exterior. But customers were waiting, and she had no time to dwell on the mysterious moods of millionaires. She hurried to the bar to place his drink order. Throughout his meal, Lisa noticed Blake watching her with unusual interest. Not the creepy kind she sometimes got from certain customers, but something more puzzling. Each time she approached his table, he seemed to be studying her, as if trying to solve a riddle. During a rare, quiet moment, as she refilled his water glass, much more carefully this time, he surprised her with a question. "Do you play, or do you just appreciate Chopin?" Lisa hesitated. Her personal life wasn't something she usually shared with customers. But there was something in his question that seemed genuinely curious rather than merely making conversation. "I used to play," she admitted, "since I was little. My mother taught piano lessons from our home. And now," he pressed. "Now I work here," she said with a small smile. "Life happens," he didn't smile back. "That doesn't answer my question." The directness caught her off guard. Most people would have taken the hint and dropped the subject, but Richard Blake clearly wasn't most people. "I still play sometimes," she conceded. "When I can," which isn't often between double shifts here and nursing school. This information seemed to interest him even more. "Nursing school? So the piano wasn't your chosen path?" "It was once," Lisa said, suddenly unsure why she was telling him all this. "I actually had a scholarship offer to study music. But my mom got sick and medical bills piled up and, well, medicine seemed more practical than music." Blake's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Practical isn't always right." Before Lisa could respond, another server hurried past, accidentally bumping her. The restaurant was filling up again with the late dinner crowd. The moment of unexpected connection broken, she straightened her posture back into professional mode. "Can I get you anything else, Mr. Blake? Perhaps dessert?" He shook his head. "Just the check." As Lisa went to print his bill, Diane sidled up beside her at the computer terminal. "How's it going with Mr. Sunshine? He giving you a hard time?" "Actually, no. He's been almost nice." "We talked about music," Diane raised an eyebrow. "Music, Blake?" "The man barely speaks beyond ordering his food. He recognized a piece I was humming, knew it by opus number." Well, Diane mused, collecting desserts for her own table. Maybe there's a human being under that expensive suit after all. When Lisa returned with the check, Blake was watching a group of laughing business people at a nearby table. They were celebrating something, a promotion or closed deal perhaps, their joy creating a bubble of energy in the restaurant. One woman was trying to convince another to play the piano. "Come on, Jill. You said you took lessons." That was 20 years ago. "I can barely remember chopsticks." Their laughter seemed to deepen the lines on Blake's face. He turned back to Lisa as she placed the leather folder with his bill on the table. "It's a beautiful instrument," he said, nodding toward the piano. "Steinway. Model B. Probably worth more than most cars in the parking lot." Lisa followed his gaze. The owner likes nice things, even if they're just for decoration. Blake removed his credit card from a slim wallet and placed it in the folder without even glancing at the total. As Lisa reached for it, he didn't let go immediately. "Tell me," he said, his eyes searching hers. "If you could go back, would you still choose nursing over music?" The question hit her like a physical force. No one had asked her that before, not even herself. She'd been too busy surviving to second-guess her choices. "I don't think about what can't be changed," she answered finally. "My mom needed me, and people will always need nurses." He released the folder. A diplomatic answer. An honest one, she countered, surprising herself with her boldness. When she returned with his receipt, Blake was standing by the table, putting on an expensive overcoat. Outside, rain had started to fall, pattering against the large windows. The restaurant had grown louder as more tables filled with the Friday night crowd. "Thank you for dining with us tonight," Lisa said, handing him his copy of the receipt and a pen. "Have a good evening, Mr. Blake." He took the pen but didn't sign immediately. Instead, he looked from Lisa to the piano and back again. Something was building behind his eyes, a decision being made. "You said you still play sometimes," he said, his voice cutting through the ambient restaurant noise with surprising clarity. Lisa nodded uncertainly. "When I can." Blake gestured toward the piano with his chin. "Play something now. It wasn't a request." It was a challenge, spoken loudly enough that several nearby diners turned to look. Lisa felt her cheeks grow warm as she realized people were watching this exchange. "I'm working, Mr. Blake," she said quietly. "And that piano is just for show, like I said. I'll speak to your manager. Consider it a special request from a valued customer." His eyes held hers. Unless you were exaggerating about your abilities. Lisa felt a flash of irritation cut through her embarrassment. Was he testing her? Trying to humiliate her for his own amusement? She'd seen wealthy customers do stranger things when bored. Diane appeared at her side, sensing trouble. "Everything all right here?" Blake turned his attention to the senior waitress. "I was just asking if your restaurant might make an exception and allow this young lady to play the piano. I noticed it sitting unused and it seems a waste." Diane looked from Blake to Lisa, clearly confused by this unusual request. "Well, I don't think it would be a problem. But Lisa is on shift and I'll make it worth her time," Blake interrupted, signing his receipt with a flourish before handing it back to Lisa. When she glanced down, her eyes widened. He had added a tip larger than her weekly pay. "2 minutes of your talent," Blake said, his voice softer now. "That's all I'm asking." Lisa stood frozen, the receipt in her hand, aware of the curious stares from nearby tables. The challenge hung in the air between them. In that moment, something shifted in Blake's expression, a glimpse of something almost vulnerable beneath his confident exterior. And suddenly, Lisa understood. This wasn't about humiliating her. This was about the music, the Chopin she'd been humming. For whatever reason, it meant something to him. She straightened her shoulders and handed the signed receipt to Diane. "Cover my tables for 5 minutes?" Diane looked at the tip amount and her eyebrows shot up. "Take 10 if you want." As Lisa made her way toward the piano, conversations hushed. The manager, noticing the unusual activity, started toward her with a questioning look, but Blake intercepted him with a quiet word. Lisa sat on the bench, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd played for anyone but herself. She adjusted the seat, buying time as her heart raced. What if she embarrassed herself? What if years of sporadic practice had eroded her skill too much? She took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. The piano was indeed beautiful, far nicer than any she'd played before. She glanced up to see Blake watching intently, standing apart from the other diners, his face unreadable. Then she looked back at the keys and began to play. The moment Lisa's fingers touched the keys, the world around her seemed to fade away. The chatter of the restaurant, the clinking of silverware, the weight of curious stares, all of it dissolved into the background as she connected with the instrument. She started slowly, tentatively, with the first gentle notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she'd been humming earlier, the same piece that had somehow caught Richard Blake's attention. Her fingers remembered the path even after all this time. Like returning to a childhood home, there was both familiarity and strangeness in the journey. The piano's touch was more responsive than her old upright at home, each note ringing with a clarity that made her heart ache. As she played the opening bars, she risked a glance up. Blake stood motionless, his face unreadable, watching her with an intensity that might have unnerved her if she wasn't already lost in the music. Around him, conversations had hushed. A waiter paused mid-step, water pitcher in hand. Even the kitchen staff had poked their heads out to see what was happening. Lisa closed her eyes and let herself fall deeper into the piece. This wasn't about impressing a millionaire or earning a tip anymore. This was about the part of herself she'd kept locked away for too long. The melody flowed from her fingers, filling the restaurant with its bittersweet beauty. She felt tears threatening behind her closed eyelids, but pushed them back. Not here, not now. Instead, she channeled that emotion into the music, her body swaying slightly as the piece built toward its emotional peak. When she finally played the last gentle notes and opened her eyes, the restaurant had fallen completely silent. For one terrible moment, she thought she'd made a fool of herself. Then a glass clinked, someone inhaled sharply, and suddenly the room erupted in applause. People were standing. Some were wiping their eyes. Diane was grinning from ear to ear by the bar. Even the chef had come out, still holding a spatula, clapping with genuine appreciation. Lisa felt her cheeks flush hot with embarrassment and unexpected joy. She hadn't performed for an audience in years. She'd forgotten the rush of it, the connection, the way music could transform a room full of strangers into a shared experience. As the applause continued, she finally looked at Blake. He hadn't joined in the clapping. Instead, he stood perfectly still, his expression cracked open to reveal something raw and painful. For the briefest moment, she saw past the millionaire exterior to the man beneath, and he looked shattered. Before she could process this, Blake turned abruptly and headed for the door, moving with such purpose that diners scrambled to get out of his way. Lisa stood up from the piano bench, confused by his sudden departure. That was incredible. Diane hurried over, beaming. Where did you learn to play like that? You've been holding out on us. Lisa barely heard her. Her eyes were on Blake's retreating back as he pushed through the restaurant doors into the rainy night. Had she done something wrong? Why challenge her to play and then leave the moment she finished? I should get back to my tables, Lisa said, still distracted. Are you kidding? After that performance, you deserve a break. Besides, Diane lowered her voice conspiratorially. Did you see the tip he left you? $200. You could take the rest of the night off and still come out ahead. Lisa stared at her in disbelief. 200? That can't be right. Check for yourself. Diane pressed the signed receipt into her hand. Sure enough, there it was in neat handwriting, $200. Lisa felt a mix of gratitude and confusion. Such generosity from a man known for his demanding standards was unexpected enough. But combined with his abrupt exit, it left her completely bewildered. The restaurant had returned to its normal rhythm, though several diners smiled at her or nodded appreciatively as she made her way back to the service station. A middle-aged woman stopped her with a gentle touch on the arm. That was beautiful, dear. My late husband used to play that piece. Hearing it again was, well, it was a gift, thank you. Lisa thanked her and continued on, a strange feeling settling in her chest. Music had always been her private joy, her secret comfort. Sharing it tonight had opened something inside her that she'd kept carefully closed for years. As her shift continued, word of her impromptu performance spread through the restaurant. Customers requested her section, asked about her background, even inquired if she would play again. Her manager, initially confused by the break in routine, now beamed at her with newfound appreciation. I had no idea we had a concert pianist serving drinks, he joked, helping her carry a tray of desserts. Blake's a regular, you know. Hard to please. Whatever you did tonight, he's never left a tip like that before. I just played some Chopin, Lisa said, still puzzled by the whole encounter. Actually, he left before I finished. Did I do something wrong? Her manager shook his head. With Blake, who knows? Man's a mystery. Built a tech empire from nothing. Could buy this whole block if he wanted to, but always dines alone. Never seen him bring anyone here, not once in 3 years. As the night wound down and the last customers left, Lisa found herself drawn back to the piano. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just staff cleaning up and finishing side work. She sat on the bench again, not playing, just resting her fingers lightly on the keys. You should take him up on it, Diane said, coming to stand beside her with a stack of folded napkins. Take who up on what? Lisa asked Blake. He left his card with Tony at the bar, said if you wanted to play at his charity gala next month to call him. Diane raised her eyebrows. Those events are major. Rich people writing big checks, networking, showing off. The kind of opportunity that doesn't just fall in your lap. Lisa's stomach tightened. I can't play at an event like that. I haven't performed seriously in years. I'm not what? Not good enough? After what we all heard tonight? Diane set down her napkins and put her hands on her hips. Look, I've worked here 5 years. I've seen pianists they hire specially for events. None of them played with what you had tonight. What did I have? Lisa asked quietly. Heart, Diane said simply. You weren't just playing notes. You were telling a story. Later that night, Lisa sat on her second-hand sofa in her tiny apartment, turning Blake's business card over in her hands. The embossed lettering caught the light from her single lamp. Richard Blake, CEO, Blake Technologies. A phone number, an email. Nothing personal, nothing warm. Just like the man himself. Why had her playing affected him so strongly? Why had he left so abruptly? And why was he now offering her a chance to play at a high-profile event? She set the card on her coffee table and opened her nursing textbook, trying to focus on the chapter she needed to read before her morning class. But the words swam before her eyes, replaced by musical notes and the memory of the piano's touch. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How was work tonight? Lisa stared at the message, unsure how to even begin explaining the evening's events. Finally, she typed, Interesting. A customer asked me to play the piano. 3 dots appeared immediately as her mother typed back, You played? In public? Oh, honey, that's wonderful. It's been so long. Before Lisa could respond, another text came through. Was it that piece we used to play together? The Chopin? Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. Her mother had always believed in her talent, had sacrificed so much to nurture it. When Lisa had turned down the music scholarship to study nursing instead, her mother never complained, never guilted her. She had simply packed away her disappointment and supported her daughter's new path. Yes, it was the Chopin, Lisa typed back. A customer requested it. Sort of. And how did it feel? How did it feel? Like coming home. Like finding a piece of herself she'd tried to forget. Like standing in sunshine after years in shadow. Good, she wrote simply. It felt good. Her mother's response was immediate. I'm so glad, sweetheart. Music was always in your heart. Lisa set down her phone and looked again at Blake's business card. Playing tonight had awakened something she'd tried to bury. The thought of performing at a gala terrified her. But the thought of closing that door again, of returning to a life without music, terrified her more. Her textbook sat open, full of information that could save lives someday. Her practical choice, her responsible path. Next to it sat the card that represented a road not taken, a dream deferred. The following morning, Lisa arrived early for her shift, barely having slept. All night, her mind had alternated between reliving her performance and imagining all the ways she could embarrass herself at a charity gala full of wealthy, judgmental people. She was surprised to see Blake already seated at his usual table, impeccably dressed as always. The morning newspaper spread before him. This was unusual. He typically only came for dinner, never breakfast. As she approached with coffee pot in hand, he looked up. In the morning light, she could see the fatigue around his eyes, as though he too had spent a restless night. Good morning, Mr. Blake, she said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the strangeness of their last encounter. Coffee? He nodded, folding his newspaper. Please. As she poured, she noticed his hands, long-fingered, well-manicured, but with a slight tremor today. The hands of someone under strain. Your manager mentioned I left rather abruptly last night, he said when she finished pouring. That was impolite of me. Lisa was startled by what appeared to be an apology. It's fine, really. And thank you for the generous tip. It was unnecessary but very kind. It was entirely necessary, Blake said firmly, and entirely inadequate for what you gave in return. There was an uncomfortable silence as Lisa tried to decipher his meaning. Finally, she gathered her courage. Diane mentioned something about a charity gala? Blake's expression brightened slightly. Yes, next month. A fundraiser for the city's arts education programs. We always have a pianist for the reception. The usual performer canceled, and after hearing you play, he trailed off, then cleared his throat. It pays, of course, well. Lisa hesitated. Mr. Blake, I'm flattered, but I don't perform professionally. Last night was the first time I've played in public in years. All the more remarkable, then. His eyes met hers directly. Do you know why I left so quickly last night, Lisa? She shook her head. Because you played that piece exactly as my late wife used to play it. Not technically. She was a concert pianist before her illness. But emotionally. The same phrasing, the same heart. His voice caught on the last word. It caught me off guard. I needed air. Lisa stood very still, coffee pot warm in her hand, suddenly understanding the pain she'd glimpsed in his expression the night before. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't know. How could you have? He waved away her apology. But now you understand my interest. The gala would be a fitting tribute to her memory, and an opportunity I think you deserve. Will you consider it? Lisa looked at this complicated man, this stranger who had somehow crashed into her carefully ordered life and stirred up dreams she'd thought long buried. I'll think about it, she promised. As she walked away, she realized she'd already made her decision. Some doors, once reopened, simply cannot be closed again. The day of the charity gala arrived faster than Lisa could have imagined. For the past month, she had spent every spare moment practicing, sacrificing sleep and social time to prepare. Her small apartment had no piano, so she had arranged to use the practice rooms at the community college after her nursing classes. Sometimes she stayed until the janitor politely kicked her out at closing time. Tonight she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. Diane had insisted on lending her a formal dress, midnight blue with a modest neckline and a skirt that flowed to the floor. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail for work, now fell in soft waves around her shoulders. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, confident. Lisa felt anything but. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. So proud of you, sweetheart. You're going to be amazing tonight. Lisa smiled despite her nerves. After her impromptu performance at the restaurant, she had finally told her mother the full story about Blake and his unusual offer. Her mother had cried, happy tears, she insisted, and immediately started digging through old boxes to find Lisa's sheet music. It's a sign, her mother had said, eyes bright with excitement. Life giving you a second chance to share your gift. Lisa wasn't sure about signs or second chances. All she knew was that she had given her word to Blake and she intended to keep it. A car horn sounded outside, the taxi she had splurged on for tonight. She couldn't exactly show up to a Millionaire's charity gala on the bus. The venue was a historic hotel in the wealthy part of town, an area Lisa rarely had reason to visit. As the taxi pulled up to the entrance, she saw women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos ascending the grand staircase. Valets rushed to park luxury cars. Photographers snapped pictures of local celebrities. Lisa's stomach clenched. What was she doing here? She didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. She belonged in nursing scrubs, not evening gowns. For a wild moment, she considered telling the driver to take her back home. "Miss, we're here," the taxi driver said, looking at her expectantly in the rearview mirror. Lisa took a deep breath and handed him the fare plus a tip. No turning back now. Inside the hotel lobby, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors. Staff in formal uniforms directed guests toward the ballroom. Lisa followed the crowd, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. Lisa. She turned at the sound of her name and saw Blake approaching. Like the other men, he wore a tuxedo, but somehow he stood out. Perhaps it was his posture, or the way others seemed to step aside instinctively as he moved through the space. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I was beginning to worry." "I said I would," Lisa replied. Up close, she noticed he looked tired, with dark circles beneath his eyes that his expensive suit couldn't disguise. "Are you all right, Mr. Blake?" "Richard," he corrected her. "Tonight I'm Richard, not Mr. Blake, and yes, I'm fine. These events are just draining." He gestured toward the ballroom. "Shall we?" As they walked, Lisa was acutely aware of curious glances from other guests. A few people stopped Richard to shake his hand or exchange pleasantries, their eyes darting to Lisa with poorly concealed interest. The ballroom was even more intimidating than the lobby. Tables draped in white linen surrounded a dance floor. At the far end, a stage had been set up with a podium for speeches. And there, just to the right of the stage, stood a grand piano, larger and more impressive than the one at the restaurant. "That's where you'll play," Richard said, following her gaze. "During the reception and while people are being seated for dinner. About 45 minutes total." Lisa nodded, suddenly unable to speak. The reality of what she had agreed to was sinking in, along with a fresh wave of doubt. These people were used to professional musicians, not waitresses who played as a hobby. "Would you like to try it out before guests arrive?" Richard asked. "Get a feel for the instrument?" Before she could answer, they were interrupted by a tall woman with silver hair swept into an elegant updo. "Richard, darling, you've been hiding from the committee," she said, air-kissing his cheek. "We need to discuss the auction items before—" She stopped, noticing Lisa. "And who is this lovely young woman?" "Helena, this is Lisa Mitchell, our pianist for this evening." "Lisa, this is Helena Windsor, the chairwoman of the Arts Education Foundation." Helena's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "I thought Gregory Walsh was performing tonight. Has there been a change?" "Gregory had a scheduling conflict," Richard said smoothly. "Lisa has graciously agreed to step in." Helena studied Lisa with newfound interest. "Are you with the conservatory, dear?" "No, ma'am," Lisa answered honestly. "I work at La Riviera restaurant." Helena's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "How unexpected. Well, we appreciate you helping out on such short notice. If you'll excuse us, Richard and I have some details to finalize." As Helena led Richard away, Lisa overheard her hissing, "A waitress? Really, Richard? This isn't open mic night at a coffee shop." Lisa's face burned with embarrassment. She should never have come. This whole thing was a mistake, a fantasy that had no place in her real life of double shifts and nursing exams. She turned to leave, but found her path blocked by a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a bow tie slightly askew. "Don't mind Helena," he said quietly. "She means well, but she's a terrible snob. I'm Arthur, by the way, Richard's oldest friend and business partner." "Lisa," she replied automatically, still fighting the urge to flee. Richard mentioned you'd be playing tonight. Said he heard you at that Italian place and was blown away. Arthur's eyes crinkled when he smiled. He doesn't impress easily, our Richard. I think he was just being kind, Lisa said. I'm not a professional. Neither was Glenn Gould until he was, Arthur replied with a wink. Come on, I'll show you to the piano. You can warm up before this place gets crowded. Despite her reservations, Lisa found herself following Arthur across the ballroom. The piano was even more beautiful up close. A Steinway concert grand, its black surface gleaming under the lights. Go ahead, Arthur encouraged. No one's listening but me, and I'm half deaf anyway. Lisa sat down hesitantly. The bench felt different from the one at the restaurant. Higher, firmer. She adjusted it slightly, then placed her hands on the keys without pressing down. Richard said you played Chopin that night, Arthur said, standing beside the piano. His wife's favorite. Lisa looked up in surprise. He told you about that? Arthur nodded. First time he's mentioned Catherine's music in years. Must have been quite a performance. Lisa didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply turned back to the keys and began to play. Softly at first, just scales to warm up her fingers and test the piano's action. The instrument responded beautifully, each note ringing clear and true. Gradually, she transitioned into the piece she had prepared for tonight, Debussy's Clair de Lune. Different from the Chopin she had played at the restaurant, but equally emotional. As she played, she forgot about Arthur standing nearby, forgot about Helena's dismissive remarks, forgot about the intimidating venue. There was only the music, flowing from her fingers like water, filling the empty ballroom with its gentle beauty. When she finished, she was startled to hear applause not just from Arthur, but from a small group of staff who had paused in their preparations to listen. One of the waiters gave her a thumbs up. Well, Arthur said, smiling broadly, I'd say Helena can put her concerns to rest. Over the next hour, guests began to arrive in earnest. As instructed, Lisa played background music while they mingled, sipped champagne, and bid on silent auction items. She chose pieces carefully, nothing too showy or demanding of attention, but nothing forgettable either. From her seat at the piano, she observed the social dynamics of the wealthy. The air kisses, the practiced laughs, the subtle competition in clothes and jewelry. Richard moved through the crowd with practiced ease, though she noticed he never lingered long with any one group. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the room and he would give her a small nod of encouragement. Once she caught him standing still amid the swirl of conversation, eyes closed, simply listening to her play. As the reception portion of the evening wound down and guests began moving toward their assigned tables for dinner, Richard approached the piano. You're doing wonderfully, he said quietly. Better than I could have hoped. Thank you for giving me this chance, Lisa replied. It means more than you know. One more piece before dinner, Richard said. Your choice, something meaningful. Lisa understood what he was asking. She waited until the room had quieted somewhat, then began to play the Chopin Nocturne, the piece that had started this whole unlikely journey. She poured everything into it, her gratitude, her rediscovered passion, her understanding of the piece's significance to Richard. As the final notes faded, she looked up to find Richard standing with his eyes closed, one hand gripping the edge of the piano. When he opened them, she was startled to see tears glistening in the corners. That was for Catherine, he said, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the ballroom. Yes, Lisa answered simply. Before he could respond, Helena appeared at his elbow. Richard, everyone's seated. We need you to make the welcome speech. Richard straightened, composing himself with visible effort. Of course. To Lisa, he added, join table 3 for dinner. Arthur will show you. As promised, Arthur escorted her to a table near the front. To her surprise, the other guests, mostly older couples involved with the Arts Foundation, welcomed her warmly. Several complimented her playing. One woman, a former music teacher, engaged her in a detailed discussion about Debussy's techniques. Throughout dinner and the speeches that followed, Lisa found herself unexpectedly enjoying the evening. These people, for all their wealth and privilege, shared a genuine passion for music and arts education. Their cause, bringing music programs back to public schools, was one she could wholeheartedly support. When Richard took the stage to announce the fundraising total, the room erupted in applause. They had exceeded their goal by nearly 50%. And now, Richard continued after the applause died down. I'd like to introduce someone special. Many of you have been asking about the talented pianist who performed during our reception. Lisa Mitchell isn't from the conservatory. She doesn't have a record deal or a concert tour. She's a waitress at La Riviera and a nursing student. Trying to make ends meet like so many young people in our city. Lisa froze as every head in the room turned toward her. But Lisa has something that can't be bought or taught, an extraordinary gift for music. A gift that might have remained hidden if not for a chance encounter. Richard's eyes found hers across the room. Would you join me on stage, Lisa? Her heart hammering, Lisa rose from her seat. The walk to the stage felt endless, but somehow she made it without tripping over her borrowed dress. Standing beside Richard under the bright lights, facing a sea of curious faces, Lisa had never felt more exposed, or more alive. Standing on stage beside Richard Blake, Lisa felt hundreds of eyes on her. The spotlight was warm against her skin, making the borrowed dress feel suddenly too tight. She had never imagined herself here in this moment, in this world so far removed from her everyday life of taking orders and studying for exams. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your extraordinary gift with us tonight, Richard said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the hushed ballroom. Your performance reminded us all why we're here, to ensure that young people with talent like yours have the opportunity to develop it, regardless of their circumstances. The audience applauded politely. Lisa smiled nervously, unsure if she was supposed to say something in return. Richard saved her from having to decide. I'd like to make a personal announcement, he continued. In honor of my late wife, Catherine, I am establishing a new scholarship for working musicians, those who, like Lisa, balance their passion for music with the practical demands of making a living. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Helena in the front row looked surprised. Arthur beside her was grinning broadly. The Catherine Blake Memorial Scholarship will provide tuition and living expenses for recipients to pursue formal music education while continuing their careers, Richard explained. And I'm pleased to announce that Lisa Mitchell will be its first recipient, should she choose to accept. Lisa's head snapped toward him in shock. The crowd's applause faded to white noise as she tried to process what he had just said. A scholarship for her? She hadn't applied for anything. Hadn't even mentioned her abandoned music dreams to him beyond that brief conversation at the restaurant. Richard turned to her, away from the microphone, his eyes questioning. We can discuss the details later, he said quietly. No pressure. Before she could respond, he was turning back to the audience, wrapping up his speech, thanking sponsors. Lisa stood frozen beside him, her mind racing. When he finally led her off the stage, her legs moved automatically, following him through a side door into a quiet corridor away from the crowd. I'm sorry to spring that on you, Richard said once they were alone. It was presumptuous. A little, Lisa agreed, finding her voice at last. Why did you do that? Richard ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture from someone who always seemed so composed. Honestly, I didn't plan to. But watching you play tonight, seeing how the music transforms you and everyone who hears it. He trailed off, searching for words. It would be a crime to let that talent go undeveloped. I chose nursing, Lisa reminded him. It wasn't forced on me. I know. Richard leaned against the wall, suddenly looking tired. And it's a noble profession. But can I ask why? Why nursing instead of music? Lisa had asked herself the same question many times over the years. My mother got sick my senior year of high school. Cancer. The medical bills piled up fast. Our health insurance was a joke. She paused, remembering those dark months. The nurses who cared for her, they made all the difference. Not just medically, but they saw her as a person, not just a patient. I wanted to be that for someone else. Richard nodded slowly. And the music scholarship you mentioned before? The one you turned down? It covered tuition, but not living expenses. Not my mother's care, Lisa shrugged. An easy choice, really. And now? Your mother's health? In remission, thank God, 4 years cancer-free. Lisa smiled at the thought. She's the one who kept all my old sheet music. Never gave up hope I'd play again someday. A comfortable silence fell between them. From the ballroom, they could hear the sounds of the event continuing. The clinking of glasses, bursts of laughter. The low hum of conversation. I should probably get back, Richard said eventually. People will wonder where their host disappeared to. And I should call a taxi, Lisa added. It's getting late and I have an early class tomorrow. Richard looked like he wanted to say more but thought better of it. At least think about the scholarship? No strings attached. Catherine would have wanted her money to support real talent. Lisa nodded. I'll think about it. As Richard turned to go, she found herself calling after him. Why did you really ask me to play that first night? At the restaurant? The truth. He paused, not turning around immediately. When he did, his expression was more open than she had ever seen it. Catherine loved that nocturne. After she died, I couldn't bear to hear it. Couldn't listen to any piano music, really? For 3 years. His voice was low, private. Then I heard you humming it, and something shifted. I needed to know if I could hear it again without falling apart. And could you? Lisa asked softly. A sad smile touched his lips. No, but I discovered that falling apart isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's necessary. With that, he returned to the ballroom, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts. The next morning arrived with gray skies and gentle rain. Lisa had barely slept, her mind replaying the events of the gala like a movie she couldn't pause. The weight of Richard's offer pressed on her, the opportunity it represented, the change it would demand. She arrived at her nursing clinical rotation 10 minutes early, changed into scrubs and tried to focus on the day ahead. Today's assignment was in the oncology ward, always emotionally challenging but deeply rewarding. You look tired, observed Nurse Taylor, her supervisor for the day. Late night? Something like that, Lisa replied with a small smile. I'll be fine. As they made their rounds, checking on patients, changing IVs, administering medications, Lisa found herself fully present in the work. This was why she had chosen nursing. The direct impact, the human connection, the feeling of making a tangible difference in someone's worst moments. In room 412, they met Mr. Winters, a new patient starting his first round of chemotherapy. He sat tense in his bed, eyes fixed on the IV drip as if it were a snake about to strike. First time's the scariest, Lisa said gently as she checked his vital signs. It gets more routine, believe it or not. Nothing about cancer is routine, he said flatly. No, she agreed. You're right about that, but you're not alone in this. That counts for something. As she worked, she noticed a small music player on his bedside table. Are you a music fan, Mr. Winters? His expression softened slightly. Classical. My wife makes fun of me for it. Says it's boring. What are you listening to? Chopin helps calm my nerves, Lisa smiled. He's one of my favorites, too. Later, during her lunch break, Lisa found herself in an empty patient lounge. A battered upright piano sat in the corner, a donation from years ago, rarely played and slightly out of tune. Without really thinking about it, she sat down and began to play softly. The same Chopin nocturne, but gentler, mellower than her performance at the gala. She didn't notice Mr. Winters in the doorway until she finished playing. He stood leaning on an IV pole, wearing a hospital robe over his gown. That was beautiful, he said. Are you a professional? Lisa shook her head. Just a nursing student who used to play a lot. You should play more often. It's a gift. He gestured to the chair beside him. Mind if I sit? I needed to walk a bit, clear my head. As they talked, Lisa learned he was a high school science teacher, father of 3, diagnosed just 2 weeks ago. His biggest fear wasn't the pain or even death. It was leaving his children without enough memories of him. I know exactly how they'll remember me now, he said grimly. Sick, that's no legacy. Maybe not, Lisa said. But you're more than your illness. Just like your students are more than their test scores, right? He smiled at that. Touché. By the time she helped him back to his room, Lisa had made a decision. That evening, she arrived at La Riviera for her dinner shift with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. Diane greeted her with curious questions about the gala, which Lisa answered vaguely as she tied her apron. Blake's here again, Diane whispered, nodding toward his usual table. 3rd time this week. Think he's waiting for you. Lisa took a deep breath and approached his table. Good evening, Mr. Blake. He looked up from his phone, something like hope flickering across his face when he saw her. Lisa, how was your day? Illuminating, she replied. I've been thinking about your offer. And? She sat down across from him without asking permission. Something the Lisa from a month ago would never have dared. I want to accept, but with conditions. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. I'm listening. I'm not giving up nursing, she said firmly. I believe I can do both, music and medicine. They heal in different ways. That's not conventional, Richard said slowly. Neither was daring your waitress to play piano in the middle of dinner, she pointed out with a small smile. He conceded with a nod. What else? I want to develop a music therapy program at City Hospital, focusing on oncology patients. I've seen firsthand how music can help people through their darkest moments. She paused. That would be my special project as a scholarship recipient. Richard studied her face, his expression thoughtful. Catherine would have loved that idea. She believed music could reach people when nothing else could. There's one more thing, Lisa added, her voice softer. I want to know about her, about Catherine. The woman who loved the same music I do. Richard's face stilled, and for a moment Lisa thought she had gone too far. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he extracted a worn photograph of a woman seated at a grand piano, her face turned toward the camera with a joyful smile. This was Catherine, he said, handing Lisa the photo. Concert pianist. Child prodigy. Most stubborn woman I ever met. His voice held equal measures of pride and grief. We met at Juilliard. I was studying business but took a music appreciation course to fulfill an arts requirement. She was the teaching assistant who gave me a C on my first paper. Lisa studied the photograph. Catherine had been beautiful, with dark hair and bright eyes full of life. It was strange to finally see the face of the woman who had unknowingly altered the course of Lisa's life. What happened? She asked gently. ALS, Richard said, the single syllable heavy with years of pain. It took her ability to play first. Fingers, then hands, then arms. She fought it every step of the way, but... He trailed off. I'm so sorry, Lisa said, returning the photograph. Richard looked at it one last time before carefully tucking it away. After she died, I threw myself into making money, building the company. As if success could fill the hole she left. He gave a rueful smile. It doesn't, of course. What does? Lisa asked. I'll let you know when I figure it out. He straightened, his business demeanor returning like a protective shell. So we have a deal? You'll accept the scholarship with your conditions? Lisa nodded. Yes, good. He offered his hand across the table. To new beginnings. As they shook hands, Lisa felt the weight of the moment, the strange intersection of their lives, the unexpected second chance she'd been given, the possibilities stretching before her. I should get back to work, she said, rising from the chair. My manager is giving me the evil eye. Of course, Richard nodded. We'll talk details later. As Lisa turned to go, he called after her one more time. Lisa, play something before you go? For old time's sake? She smiled. Any requests? Surprise me, he said. Something new. And so she did, walking to the piano that had started it all, sitting down with newfound confidence, and playing a piece she'd composed herself but never shared. A piece about loss and hope, endings and beginnings. In the corner of her eye, she saw Richard close his eyes to listen. And this time when she finished, he didn't walk away. 1 year later, Lisa stood in the hallway outside the oncology ward, her hands slightly trembling. Not from nervousness, not anymore, but from anticipation. Behind the double doors, patients and their families were gathering for the unveiling of the new music therapy room at City Hospital. Her project, her vision, now a reality. She smoothed down the front of her dress, a simple but elegant blue one she had bought herself, not borrowed this time. The nursing pin on her lapel caught the light, a reminder of the journey she had completed. 6 months ago, she had graduated with her nursing degree, walking across the stage to accept her diploma with her mother, cheering loudly in the audience, and Richard sitting quietly beside her mother, his presence a surprise that had brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Ready? A voice asked behind her. Lisa turned to see Richard approaching, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. The past year had changed him too, softened some of his hard edges, brought color back to his life. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied with a smile. Did the piano arrive? Delivered this morning. A Steinway, just as promised. You didn't have to do that, Lisa said, though they'd had this conversation before. The foundation's budget didn't include. The piano is a personal gift, Richard interrupted gently. From me to the program. Catherine would have wanted it that way. Lisa nodded, accepting his generosity with grace she had learned over months of working together. They had developed an easy friendship, built on shared passion for music and mutual respect. Richard had kept every promise about the scholarship, supporting her as she balanced nursing studies with formal music training. In return, she had helped him reconnect with the joy Catherine had brought to his life, one piano piece at a time. "Mr. Winters called this morning," Lisa said as they walked toward the doors together. "He's bringing his whole family today. The science teacher? Your first patient in the trial program?" Lisa nodded. "Cancer-free for 3 months now. His youngest daughter started piano lessons because of him. Because of this program." Richard smiled. One success story of many to come. Together they pushed through the double doors into the oncology ward's community room, now transformed. What had once been a sterile space with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines was now a warm, inviting room centered around a gleaming grand piano. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, already filling with patients in various stages of treatment, some in wheelchairs, some with IV poles beside them, all with expectant faces. Hospital staff lined the walls, doctors and nurses who had been skeptical at first about Lisa's music medicine, but had become believers after seeing results. In the front row sat Lisa's mother, beaming with pride, her health fully restored after her battle with cancer. Dr. Wilson, the head of oncology, stepped forward to make introductions. "Today marks the official opening of the Catherine Blake Music Therapy Program at City Hospital," he announced. "What began as a student's project has grown into something remarkable. In the 6 months of our pilot program, we've seen measurable improvements in patient outcomes, reduced anxiety, better pain management, and improved emotional well-being." He gestured toward Lisa. None of this would have been possible without the vision and dedication of Lisa Mitchell, who somehow managed to complete her nursing degree while developing this program and pursuing her own musical studies. The room filled with applause. Lisa felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment, still unused to being the center of attention despite the past year's experiences. "And of course," Dr. Wilson continued, "we're deeply grateful to Richard Blake for his generous support, both through the Catherine Blake Memorial Scholarship and his personal donations to make this space possible." Richard nodded briefly in acknowledgement, uncomfortable with praise as always. "Now," Dr. Wilson said with a smile, "I believe the best way to inaugurate this room is with music. Lisa?" As Lisa moved toward the piano, she caught sight of Mr. Winters in the audience. 10 months ago, he had been her first volunteer when she proposed music therapy sessions for chemotherapy patients. Now he sat healthy and strong, his wife beside him, his children fidgeting with excitement. Sitting at the bench, Lisa took a moment to center herself. This wasn't a performance for wealthy donors or a recital for her professors. This was something more meaningful. Music as medicine, as connection, as hope. She began to play a piece she had composed specifically for today, inspired by the stories of the patients she had worked with over the past year. It started softly, hesitantly, like a question without an answer. Gradually it built, finding strength and purpose, weaving in themes of struggle and resilience before finally resolving into something peaceful but triumphant. As the final notes faded, Lisa looked up to see many eyes glistening with tears, including Richard's. He stood quietly at the back of the room, one hand resting on the wall as if for support. Mr. Winters was the first to speak. "When I started chemotherapy, I was afraid my kids would only remember me as sick, as dying," he said, his voice carrying in the quiet room. "These music sessions gave us something else to share, something that wasn't about cancer or treatment or fear, just beauty, connection." He turned to his family. "No matter what happened, I knew they would remember that." One by one, other patients and family members shared their stories. How music had eased pain when medications couldn't. How learning to play simple melodies had given them a sense of control when their bodies were betraying them. How shared musical experiences had opened conversations too difficult to have otherwise. After the formal ceremony ended and people began to mingle, enjoying refreshments and taking turns at the piano, Lisa found herself beside Richard near the windows. "Catherine would have loved this," he said quietly, seeing her piano making such a difference. "Her piano?" Lisa asked, surprised. Richard nodded. "The Steinway was hers. It's been in storage since she died. I couldn't bear to have it in the house, but I couldn't sell it either." Lisa was speechless, understanding the magnitude of this gift. Richard, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. This is exactly where it belongs. He paused. Where you belong too. As a nurse who plays piano, Lisa said with a smile. Not quite the path either of us expected. The best paths rarely are. Later, as the gathering wound down, Lisa found herself alone at the piano. Most of the patients had returned to their rooms, the staff to their duties. Only her mother remained, chatting quietly with Dr. Wilson about volunteer opportunities at the hospital. Richard had left earlier for a business meeting, but not before confirming their monthly dinner, a tradition they had started 6 months ago. Not romantic, not exactly, but something meaningful nonetheless. Two people connected by music and loss and unexpected second chances. Lisa played softly, not really thinking about what her fingers were doing, letting the music flow naturally. She didn't notice Dr. Wilson approaching until he spoke. The board has reviewed your proposal, he said. They've approved the expansion of the music therapy program to pediatrics with you as the director. Lisa's hands stilled on the keys. Really? Even with my limited experience? Your results speak for themselves, he replied. Besides, you bring something unique. You understand both the medical science and the music. That's rare. As Dr. Wilson walked away, Lisa's mother joined her at the piano bench. Look at you, her mother said, bumping her shoulder gently. Director of music therapy. Who would have thought? Not me, Lisa admitted. A year ago, I was just trying to make rent and pass pharmacology. A year ago, you played piano for a stranger and changed both your lives, her mother pointed out. Funny how things work out. Together, they looked around the room at the piano, the comfortable chairs, the wall where photos of patients engaged in music therapy sessions were displayed alongside framed research data showing the program's success. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Richard Blake hadn't come to the restaurant that night? Her mother asked. If he hadn't heard you humming Chopin? Lisa thought about all the intersecting choices and chances that had led to this moment. Her decision to work at La Riviera, Richard's regular dinner reservations, her habit of humming while she worked, his grief-fueled challenge, her courage in accepting it. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm grateful it happened. As they prepared to leave, Lisa's phone chimed with a message. It was from Richard. Catherine's old conservatory called. They want you to perform at their alumni concert next month, as my guest. Say yes? Lisa smiled and typed back a single word. Yes. Her mother read over her shoulder and raised an eyebrow. Just friends, huh? For now, Lisa replied. We're both still figuring things out. Well, figure things out at your own pace, her mother said wisely. Some melodies take time to develop. As they walked out of the hospital together, Lisa felt a sense of rightness, of purpose fulfilled. The path ahead wasn't clear or certain. She still had musical studies to complete, a new program to build, a friendship with Richard that was evolving into something neither of them had expected. But for the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, rushing from shift to class to practice room. She was living fully, bringing together the seemingly separate parts of herself into something whole and harmonious. In the parking lot, Lisa's mother stopped by her car. Your father would have been so proud of you today. Lisa hugged her tightly. I know. He always said you had music in your soul. Even when you were tiny, you'd find anything that could make a sound and turn it into a song. I remember, Lisa said softly. As her mother drove away, Lisa stood for a moment in the afternoon sunlight, looking back at the hospital with its new sign by the entrance, Catherine Blake Music Therapy Center. From inside, she could faintly hear someone playing the piano, halting, simple notes that gradually found their rhythm and grew more confident. Another patient discovering the healing power of music, another life being transformed, one note at a time. Lisa smiled and began walking toward her own car, already composing in her head the piece she would play at the conservatory next month. It would tell the story of an unlikely dare, a hidden talent, and the extraordinary things that can happen when we find the courage to share our gifts with the world.